Rewriting history is something usually associated with communists and Confederates. But we're witnessing an attempt to rewrite history around January 6th in real time. Now, sometimes it's blatant, even beyond Trump's chronic lies, like Tucker Carlson's Fox Nation doc suggesting it was all a false flag operation, or Trumpite congressmen pretending the attackers were tourists and then calling them political prisoners, or this jackassery.
No.
Did Trump win or lose the election?
I don't know.
Well, there you go.
Because here's
the
the problem.
world does.
Yeah, but sometimes the rewriting of history comes in more subtle forms, like the talking point that it's time to turn the page, parroted by Mike Pence, who the mob wanted to murder, or Mitch McConnell's decision to kill the initial January 6th commission, or the 200 Republicans who voted to save Steve Bannon from a contempt charge because, according to one member, they were afraid of the wacko birds in the base. Or Glenn Youngkin's playbook in Virginia, sidestepping the big lie by admitting that Biden won only after his own primary was in the bag, and even then declining to say whether he would have certified the election. Right now, inside the GOP, there seem to be two primary ways of dealing with Trump's attempted coup: disinformation and downplay. Neither is acceptable, because every day we get more information about why this fight over the facts matters so much. A court filing this weekend suggests that Trump's trying to block approximately 750 pages of records from being released. Now, these include White House records and phone logs around January 6th, as well as speech drafts, emails, and talking points around his attempt to overturn the election. Now, first, administration records belong to the American people, not the ex-president. Second, the fact that he's trying to stop their release has little to do with executive privilege and everything to do with trying to hide evidence. Trump knows that the truth will not set him free, because the new details that do emerge paint a damning picture. Read Sunday's massive Washington Post investigation, which provides new evidence that the attack was not spontaneous, but spurred by Trump's lies, provoking extremist supporters to plot a violent attack on the Capitol with online threats that were far earlier and far more extensive. This was a coup attempt based on a lie spread by the ex-president. There's nothing more serious. And the vast majority of Republicans who've rolled over to enable the big lie are complicit. Because there's no middle ground here. You either care about democracy or you don't. But attempts to muddy the waters may be unwittingly aided by the Biden Justice Department's tepid charges to date, leveled at the 650 or so people arrested. Now, that was the message sent by Judge Beryl Howell in a blistering statement from the bench late last week, where she accused the DOJ of sending muddled and schizophrenic messages about the attack. Quote, "No wonder parts of the public in the U.S. are confused about whether what happened on January 6th at the Capitol was simply a petty offense of trespassing with some disorderliness or shocking criminal conduct that represented a grave threat to our democratic norms. Let me make my view clear," the judge said. The rioters were not mere protesters. The judge is right on this one. Treason must be made odious, as Andrew Johnson said during the Civil War, and the charges must fit the crime. Not trespassing or obstruction of congressional proceedings, but at least in some cases a conspiracy to commit insurrection. There must be truth before there can be reconciliation, solidified by the passage of laws like reform of the Electoral Count Act to make sure that nothing like this plot can ever be pursued again. Rewriting history to protect the guilty is a civic sin. So is enabling that rewriting to occur out of fear and greed in pursuit of short-term political gain. And that's what we're seeing play out right now. The fever of the big lie will break only when Republicans realize that it is a deal with the devil that leads to political defeat. And that's your reality check.
Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this podcast. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today, we have a special guest. Someone I think you would enjoy listening to and hearing a full story. His name's Tim Hart. Tim was present at the Capitol building on January 6th. Today, you're going to hear his side of the story. The federal government has charged Tim Hart with knowingly entering or remaining in any restricted building or grounds without lawful authority. Also, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds without lawful authority. disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, obstruction of law enforcement curing civil disorder, obstructing of justice in Congress. Today we're going to hear from Tim. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tim Hart. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Mr. Tim Hart. Tim, thanks for coming on Truman's Town Hall. I appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
All right. So I kind of, at the beginning, I let folks know what your situation is. You were at the Capitol on January 6th, and the United States of America versus Timothy Allen Hart is in progress. And I appreciate you. You've had a lot of people reach out to you to do interviews, and I appreciate you coming here, talking with me. So let's just get down to it. What made you want to go to the Trump speech at the Capitol on January 6th?
Okay. I've been doing a show for the past 3.5 years. If they want to get the pencil and paper ready, I'll give out some links to it. But I've been doing a show where we cover today's news, the weather, hot topics, QAnon post, and Q deltas. Basically, and what Q is, we believe, military intelligence that is being dropped on a anonymous chat board. Quite a few things have came to fruition from them drops. There is also some what we call deltas and timestamps that link back to Trump tweets, and Trump actually pointed to QAnon article in when he was on Twitter, and that's pretty much how I found it. The show is on dlive.tv/PSB, and it's on Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday from 9 p.m. to 11 Eastern Standard, and I've been doing it for about the last 3 years. Basically, I'm an independent journalist, and I went to January 6th to cover that day's events. Upon being at the situation there, at the Trump speech, the speakers were kind of reverbing, so it's kind of giving me a headache. So I said to my friend, let's just go on down to the Capitol, and we'll just be the first in line there. And that's what we did. So we walked down to the Capitol and was literally the very first people at the gate, the bicycle racks there.
Well, before we go there, talk to me a little bit about Q. This is something you've been following for a while. Where did you first find out about Q? And for folks that are not familiar, it's the QAnon posts that happened initially, I believe, on 4chan and then 8chan. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah, it basically started on anonymous chat boards, and they started out by asking questions. And the Q post can be found at www.qagg.news, NEWS. And they've been documented there by a webmaster Q, which is a person we've had on our show in the past. I just found it very early on in the first few posts and just immediately was gravitated towards it. I knew that in my heart that it was not some guy in the basement, as they'd like you to believe, just LARPing. And LARPing mean just live action role playing and getting people to believe fake stuff.
Right.
There was too much that made sense, and I believe it is a psyop, but it's a psyop for the good to get people to think on their own. We've pretty much been brainwashed by our mainstream media, and then we just started digging. When Q started, for the first 9 months, I was on that website probably 18 to 20 hours a day, corresponding with different people on the anonymous chat board. And what they had was what we called helper anons, but they would, if we get stuck on something, we believe they were working with the Q team, and they would kind of provide a little information to get us past a sticking point. But we've uncovered quite a bit. Basically, there is an Illuminati. They have 1,386 corporations that do 80% of the world's profit. It's a family that has 13 families in it. And under that 13 families, they're the bloodlines. Under them 13 families, there's another 300 or so that are pretty high up. And then they have their thousands of minions underneath them. But what they've figured out is that it's easier to infiltrate a country's intelligence service than it is to constantly take over the presidency. We believe that these people have been in charge ever since it's the same people that killed JFK, because he took the power from the Federal Reserve and put it back into the Treasury. So we didn't have to pay interest for money. That's just the biggest scam going, is us paying interest to the Federal Reserve. It is not federal. There is no reserve.
Right.
It's like me and you making the Podcasters of America organization and printing money.
Right.
So
it has a confusing name, Federal Reserve. So a lot of people believe it's a private bank, and a lot of people believe that the Federal Reserve is ran by the United States government, and it's not.
No, the U.S. government can't even go in the facility. The District of Columbia is not a U.S. territory. It's similar to there's a spot in Rome where the Vatican is at, and there's also a spot in London. Basically, Rome controls the church in the religion aspect. London controls the banking aspect, and D.C. controls the military aspect. And what they've done, they've set up all these wars since the beginning. This group has been in charge for quite a while, and they do the wars. They'll finance both sides of the wars, the Rothschild family, and basically we just dig on these people and find out what all they've been doing. And what we have found out is that there's a Garnet Industries at 4 a.m. They send talking points to every media outlet, every newspaper, every video, TV, radio station. They all get the same 4 talking points every day. Not the same 4, but they all get talking points every day. And you can go to YouTube and push in and type in the search bar, Conan O'Brien pushing the envelope, or Conan O'Brien, gas prices are about to rise. He when he was doing his show, he liked poking fun at how all the different news agencies literally say the same things, and you can't be in all these places at the same time, so there's no way the average person would even know that.
Right.
So they are the ones, and we believe it's a CIA operation, although it's on American soil. And the CIA is not, at least the top. There's good people in it, but part of the people at the top are part of this basically, it's a crime syndicate where they dress in suits. People just don't think that the government can be bad, but I assure you, we found quite a few instances. Like literally, the Bush family is a crime family. Same with Obama and the Clintons. Now the Bidens also. So we just try to expose what they're doing and get people awake so they can think for themselves and do their own deductive reasoning.
So when the Q thing began, what were some of the things that they would talk about that you would be able to zone in on and say, okay, yes, this is an accurate piece of information? Can you give us an example of that?
It started speeding up about the time they did the Las Vegas shooting. The Las Vegas shooting was actually an assassination of Trump, or an assassination attempt on Trump and the new king of Saudi Arabia, the younger MSB. And
what's MSB?
That's the current king of Saudi Arabia, the younger guy.
How would that be an assassination on them two? Were they at the concert? Because the Las Vegas shooting happened on the Strip there, believe at Mandalay Bay, and it was at a country concert, I think, with Jason Aldean on stage. Where was Trump and this Saudi king? I don't know.
There was. We believe that Trump flew in for this secret meeting, and they were in a hotel room, and the video was out there where there's been more than one shooting incident that night, and they just kind of they used the guy as a patsy. They've not told us the correct story. Basically, they've lied to us, and a lot of people that actually know the correct story have mysteriously died. So it's not a game. The people play for keeps that we're dealing with. They don't want to be exposed. They just tried an assassination attempt, and when it went south, that's where they just sprayed the audience out there and made it look like it was something it wasn't. So that was cover.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery around the Las Vegas shooting, and the story actually has went dead. They don't talk about this story. It's a huge story that is never talked about anymore.
Right.
So what you're saying is you believe that there was a secret meeting with Trump and the Saudi king somewhere in Vegas, and that was an assassination attempt against Trump and this Saudi king?
Correct. And then 4 days after Las Vegas, the new king of Saudi Arabia went after, there's three parts of this triangle. There is the House of Saud, there is the Rothschilds, and George Soros. And what they do, the House of Saud is the financing for Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party, also financed Obama to get into office. The House of Saud was Prince Al-Tawid. He owns Citibank, a large portion of Twitter, some Facebook, and other media outlets. So what they do is they use their money and their power to get people that are sympathetic to their cause. And it's not me and you doing the human trafficking and the drug trafficking. The two most profitable businesses in the world, period, are human trafficking and drug trafficking. And that is the elites doing that via their connections. So we've pinpointed how they use Citibank and they have their slush funds. What they'll do, the reason we send so much money to these foreign countries in the form of aid is what actually happens is they'll send 85 million to El Salvador, and 15 million will stay in El Salvador, and the remainder will come back to U.S. senators and congressmen that are in on the deal as kickbacks and slush money. So we've kind of traced this down, and Red Cross is a scam. War in general is a scam. They use all these. It's a divide and conquer. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement only pops up every 4 years, right before an election, because they use that to divide the votes.
Well, that's something. A lot of times when mainstream media talks about January 6th and things like that. They like to use terms like insurrectionist, white supremacist, things like that. I've known you for a little while. I haven't known you to be a racist, a white supremacist, or an insurrectionist. You seem like you love the United States and you wouldn't want to do anything to harm it. So, but that's my thought. What would you say to that? Where people are calling anyone who was charged for January 6th a white supremacist or insurrectionist or anything like that?
It's projection. They always blame you for what they're guilty of. And there's quite a few, and it's not just the Democrats only. Get this, it's a lot of the Democrats in office, and it's a lot of the rhinos in office. And by rhino, I mean Republican in name only.
Right.
So they are literally just Democrats running as Republicans. And for instance, in the 2018 midterm elections, there were 77 ex-CIA agents running for different offices throughout the United States.
Wow.
And what they do is they've literally figured out how to infiltrate our government from the inside. And that's kind of what why we get some of the crazy policies you're seeing now. But the reason that they're doing the January 6th thing is basically they want to frame all Trump supporters as insurrectionists and against the federal government, which we're not. My parents were both retired military. I bleed red, white, and blue. I just want it better for everybody. Their tactics are divide and conquer. So they will put white against black, young against old, men against women. They just use all these different I guess, aspects to divide the population. When you're divided, you're weak. When you're united, you're strong.
Right. So you were a huge Trump fan from the beginning then? Or who were you, like, during the, let's just go back a little bit. During the primary where Trump was embattled with Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and all these folks, who were you looking at as president at that point?
I kind of liked Trump just because I wanted to see a business person get in there, somebody that has enough money that they can't buy. Because what they do, there's three ways they get control of you.
Right.
They either blackmail you, like Epstein Island and the Playboy Mansion. What we figured out that was going on there is they'll fly these politicians and movie stars there. They'll get them drinking. There'll be some beautiful women, and then they'll say, would you like to go to a room? And then they'll take these guys into these rooms with these beautiful women, and then they'll slip them a Mickey, and there's tunnels underneath both Epstein Island and the Playboy Mansion. And what they would do is usher in underage kids, put them in provocative positions with these politicians, take some Polaroid pictures, and when the politician would sober up the next morning, right before they would leave, they would say, do whatever we say, and the politician would be like, what? And then they would show them a Polaroid, and they have them from there on out. They can, that's the blackmail way they can do it. And they also will blackmail them if they're gay, straight, you name it, transsexual. You'll be surprised to find out what all's actually going on in the and it's a group of people in government and in Hollywood that are facilitating this. They also blackmail them with cash, promise them lavish items, and you'd be surprised how many millionaires are in the Congress and whatnot, and why they stay in 40 and 50 years. It's just crazy. Those positions were 4 years and 6 years, prospectively, 2 years for some. And that's the forefathers wanted those positions to be turned over a lot, because when you turn over a position, you have less chance of corruption. And that is why when you see people in office for 40 years, you just wonder what the heck is their motivation there, because it's probably not in the best interest of the people at that point.
I would agree with that, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of congressmen who have overstayed their welcome. So you decided that Trump was your guy, and
yeah,
go ahead.
So I pretty much went with Trump because I didn't think he could be bought, and I believe I was right. And the whole Russia, as soon as here's how he got into office. The good guys knew that the election was rigged, and they can rig it a bunch of different ways. We're talking about the 2016 election first with Hillary. She was supposed to win. I believe the night before it was 98% Hillary, 2% Trump.
Right. I remember that.
So what the good guys did, and we'll call them white hats, and the bad guys are black hats. And the people we don't know that are playing both sides, they are the gray hats. And the white hats, when they went to change the voting, because we need to fix our voting system. The way it is now, everybody goes to their precinct takes a thumb drive down to the county, and then that one person at the county allegedly counts the votes. Well, in the olden days, prior to that, what we would do, and which was a fail-safe, was at your precinct, they tally it at your precinct. And then your precinct says we have 249 for Trump and 113 voted for Hillary, or vice versa. And then send that number down to the county tabulator. And then they would tabulate that. Well, that system has went bye-bye. And now it's electronic, and they figured out there's quite a few ways to cheat. We've figured out there is fractional reserve voting, which is a Trump vote would be worth 0.75 and a Hillary vote would be worth 1.25. And they can also manipulate the machines via over the phone lines and change the data. And what the white hats did on Hillary's election night is they jammed the servers so that they couldn't change the vote, and the cards fell where they made. Now, I believe we figured out they did steal about 5 states in Hillary's favor. Trump did win by a larger margin, but he won regardless. So he got in there. Now, when Trump got in there, that freaked the deep state out. And what Trump did to put them at ease was Trump picked a bunch of deep staters, known deep staters, and put them in his cabinet and in his inner circle. What that did was that gave the deep state a little bit of breathing room. They're like, oh, okay, we can watch everything he does now. And that's why he had so many leakers in his first 2-3 years in the White House. I mean, there was leaks coming out constantly just to make him look bad.
Right.
The Russia thing, Hillary was had more dealings with Russia than what Donald Trump did. That was all the DNC. Hillary paid Christopher Steele $10 million to come up with this dossier that made it look like Trump was working with Russia.
Yeah, and the Steele dossier has been proven wrong.
Correct.
However, the folks, the mainstream media sources that were pumping that out because they were really after Trump. I mean, nobody can deny that. The mainstream media was truly after Trump to discredit him. And whether you like him or you love him or you hate him, that is the truth, and the Steele dossier was false, and it's been proven.
Right. And the CIA isn't allowed to spy on the United States citizens. So what they do is there's a thing called Five Eyes, and it's different countries: Australia, UK, I believe Italy's one, and a couple others. But basically what they would do, the CIA would say, hey, can you give us all the information on Ted Cruz? And they would ask the United Kingdom for that. So the United Kingdom would literally do the spying on them and then report back to the CIA. And there was a couple, I believe, that they were watching their campaigns really closely because they didn't know who would win the primary at that point. So they were spying on probably, I think we believe, around 4 of the Republican candidates. And then you have the Seth Rich incident, which Hillary cheated Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. And Seth Rich was analyst for Bernie Sanders and the DNC. And what he did was he downloaded a bunch of emails onto a thumb drive and got that to Julius Assange in WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks published a bunch of these emails, and what we found out from these emails is they are basically satanic pedophiles. They believe in Moloch, their god, and they are pedophiles. And it's in the wording. All you have to do is read the WikiLeaks, and that's why they came on CNN and said, you're not allowed to read them. Only us journalists can read them to you.
Oh, yeah, well, I remember that.
That's because they didn't want people to look at that. So I've pretty much read them all, and they use terms that are known in the pedophile world and symbols, and they've kind of been exposed a little bit. So they haven't been brought to justice just yet, but they have been exposed. And
so was this all stuff that came out from the Q movement? I got to be honest, I wasn't a big follower on the Q thing. I looked at it periodically, but I didn't follow it as close as you did. Was this all the stuff that came out from the Q movement?
It did go into it. Q kind of put the dots together. He would make you think on your own instead of just take everything for granted. Like a lot of the school shootings are orchestrated to take away guns. Under Obama, we had a ton of school shootings because it was a 16-year plan. Obama for 8 years and Hillary for 8 years. And Obama was to weaken the United States and to get our guns taken away from the average person. And then, if you remember, he left a bunch of judges vacant, 130, 140 judges. What their plan was, Hillary was going to win the election, and she was going to install Sharia law judges from the Middle East philosophy, because that would cause chaos in our justice system. And they work better under chaos. If everything's hunky-dory, then they get outed very easily. But under chaos, they just use MK Ultra and the media to put us to sleep and to get us divided and fighting amongst ourselves so we don't look at the top of the pyramid, basically.
Where does the Sharia law judges thing come from? Where does that come from?
That's kind of the theory that because remember, Trump got to appoint all these judges.
Correct.
And
yeah, he appointed a ton.
Yeah, why wouldn't Obama have appointed those judges? He literally left them blank for particular reasons. And we believe that reason was so Hillary could install the Sharia law judges. I mean, they tried it up in Minneapolis, where there's a large population of the Muslims, and there's good Muslims and there's bad Muslims, just like there's good Christians and bad Christians and Jews and whites and black. You go by your history, not necessarily. They want you to lump you in all together, but you can't do that.
Right.
You've got to go on somebody's merits and what their past is.
Definitely.
And basically, circling back to, without using that term.
Okay.
But
okay, Jin Saki.
going back to the Las Vegas shooting, what happened 4 days after that, the King of Saudi Arabia arrested 200 princes and about 300 people. They took them all, and what they did was they flew helicopters, blacked out all their communications at these palaces, and then raided them. There was some gun battles. Some people died, and they got this Prince Al Tawid, which is pretty much the deepest pockets of this House of Saud. And what they did was and the reason they did it in Saudi Arabia is they don't have the same laws we have here. They hung those guys upside down in the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh for 30-some days, and they have different laws. They can torture the truth out of you in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So
they're Wahhabists.
Right. So what they did was they got the truth out of them, and Saudi Arabia was a big financer of Obama and Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. And what they would do is everybody knows they pretty much use the Clinton Foundation as a bag man. They donate to this Clinton Foundation so they could get favors from Hillary while she was the Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. And they also did it when Bill Clinton was in office. So, and Bill Clinton, the Bushes, and Obama, they're all in cahoots together. They're all crime families. They're not who we think they are.
You know, I just did a podcast. It was like 2 podcasts ago, talking about who was at the top of this pyramid and the conglomerates that run the world, the new world order, as they say.
Yeah, that's what they're driving for. Same people.
Yeah, a couple podcasts ago, I did something on all that, and yeah, the Clinton Foundation, their work in Haiti. I mean, there's some sketchy stuff over there that folks might want to venture out to look at.
Yeah, in Haiti, what they did was they like the light-skinned and the Africans, because Haiti doesn't have any vaccinations really. So it's pure blood, if you would say. I don't really want to get into the gross part of it, but they kidnap people, and kids have the most adrenochrome in their body, and they'll terrorize them and do things with their blood. It's pretty sickening, actually. But so, and Hillary was, if you recall, Hillary was trying to free that church group that was caught smuggling a couple bus loads of children out. They said they lost their parents, but they didn't. They just kidnapped them. And that's what was going on there. And they don't do one thing. For the way the deep state operates, they expect 5 things out of doing one thing. So when they went into Haiti, they installed, I believe, Hillary's brother now owns the largest gold mine in Haiti.
Really?
And yeah, what they'll do is they will strip the resources out of these places and put none of the money back in for the people. It's terrible, basically, but they've done it over and over in different lands. They'll come in and they'll get rid of the whoever's not agreeing with them. They'll have a coup, and then they'll put their guy in charge, and then they just pay him, and they can have their way with the resources of the different countries that they're in. Now, up until Hillary Clinton was in office, there were 7 countries that did not have a Rothschild installed central bank. Well, Libya was one of them. We saw what happened in Libya. Afghanistan was one of them. We've seen what happened in Afghanistan. Now they all have Rothschild-controlled central banks, because when they can control the money in that country and charge that country interest for that money out of thin air, then they've got them by the cojones.
Right. The cojones.
Yes. So, it's pretty, it's in depth. They are anti-Trump for sure, because he just wants everybody to, he wants everybody to have a fair chance and know the truth. And people need to realize that the truth is out there, but it just doesn't come across on the 6 o'clock news, even Fox News, where what they've figured out is if they control both sides of the spectrum, they can keep you in the middle. So they control Fox News, they control CNN, MSNBC, and whatnot, and they can keep everybody pretty much in the middle. When you're thinking outside the box is when you can see things differently.
Certainly.
So with them, and the reason there's three big media outlets that are Democratic is to give you the illusion that the Democrats there's more of them, but that is not true. That is not true. There is more people that are conservative and independent than there are in the Democratic Party, but they use their shenanigans to trick us.
Their
basically.
Power and influence. Definitely.
Right.
So let's talk about how you got to the Capitol. Let's get into that. So you live in Dayton, on the outskirts of Dayton.
Yep.
You hear there's a speech that there was a lot of different things going on at this point. At that point, the media had said Joe Biden had won the election. There were a lot of folks that were skeptical about this. And you're in Dayton, and you decide to go to D.C. How did that come about?
Yes, it just so happened that my family went out of town, and I didn't decide until like the day before to even go. It just happened; things lined up to where I could go. And
I almost went too. I got to be honest. I almost went too. Yeah.
I went armed with a GoPro and some batteries. That was my weapon, I guess. Which is
you're a citizen journalist. You
correct.
You do the Coach Clay I-70 show over on the.
Yeah, have done it for about 3 years.
Right. Way before you even went to DC.
Correct. So I went basically to get some footage for our show. What I captured there, being the first one at the gates there, every few minutes I would put up my camera and circle it around on my selfie stick. And I didn't know it at the time, but we've captured on video these groups building. And some were Antifa, some were federal informants, and a couple of them were probably even federal agents. And they gathered up, and then Trump is still talking when the first barricade was breached. The first barricade, I have on film the first guy that broke the first barricade. There was no cops at the first barricade. It was all pretty much a setup. Now that I look back on it, I'm a little pissed that I didn't figure it out sooner. But so they start pushing on the first barricade and split these bicycle racks because no one was there. And then the crowd was behind us, so it kind of pushed us up to the second barricade. And
so you were in a crowd and you were being pushed forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty obvious on all my footage. So we get to the second barricade, and there was 3 young 18-year-old girls and 1 20-year-old guy. And I even asked them, I'm like, where's all your reinforcements? And they're like, we don't know. They just told us to wait here till lunch. And I'm like, oh, wow. So then people started, a few more of the Capitol Hill police started headed that direction. And then this group pushed on this. It was like a snow fence, and it was like bicycle racks again. And they pushed right over that. And at that point, I used to work security at Hare Arena and Bear Force and whatnot around here. So I knew right then that I didn't like that claustrophobic feeling of being pushed forward. So I immediately ducked off to the left and let 700 people go in front of me.
Wow.
But
lots of people.
For some reason, I was like a drop of water that day that always found its key position, because after I let all those people go, they end up pushing through a couple more barricades, and I had walked forward, and I find myself to the left of the stage where the Washington Monument is behind us. And I walk up the stairs, and there's a Getty photographer right there, and a police officer, and me and my friend. And the police officer's like, don't come through here. And I'm like, look, we ain't interested in coming through there at all. We're just here filming. And he goes, would you block this area? I said, yeah, we won't let nobody up through here. And I had really good rapport with the female older lady in a yellow jacket that was security there for the Capitol Police.
Talk about her a little bit. You got to know her a little bit, or?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to her, and she basically told me that if anybody gets hurt or anything, bring them to her. She would get them out of that situation. Then I'm standing there recording, and then I see the head guy and the big guy in a white shirt that was in charge of the Capitol Police. And he comes out into the actual audience, or I'm going to say audience for lack of a better term.
The crowd.
He goes 5 people deep into the crowd and whispers a little bit to these guys that look like they're retired military. And I didn't think nothing of it. And then he went back and talked to...
Hold on 1 second. So there was a police officer that whispered stuff to folks in the crowd that looked to be possibly...
Not just a police officer, the head guy that quit the very next day.
So the head guy that quit the very next day was whispering to folks that were in the crowd. So what you're telling me, I think is very important. There were folks in the crowd that he knew because he identified with them.
Yes.
And he whispered things to them. Carry on. Thank you.
Yeah. Then I saw the second guy in charge, a black gentleman, come up, and he had just talked with the white shirt guy in the a little bit behind the police lines there. And he comes out and he says, I capture him on tape saying, only shoot your mace when we tell you on the radio, which seemed really weird to me because being security, you would think mace would be like a case-by-case incident. If I had a jerk in front of me trying to to badger me or break through the line, you would think they would mace them. Well, they didn't. A couple of them would break through the line and then get up there and say, come on, we need people coming this way, and try to edge on the crowd. And the cops would just be like, okay, get down. You got to get back out there. And they would usher them back down. That seemed a little weird. And then it started making sense after I looked at it, the footage when I got home. What they did was they started, the crowd was calm. They were just there, except for the instigators. Everybody, all the Trump supporters were calm. They weren't there to take over the Capitol. Nobody had weapons. I mean, it was just real blown out of proportion. But what they did,
from the media side, and when you're
Right.
talking about instigators, how can you differentiate the Trump supporters versus instigators? What? Because I know there's one dude, and I want to talk about this guy here in a minute. But how can you differentiate the instigators versus regular old Trump supporters?
the average Trump supporter was Jimmy from Idaho, who thought that the election got stolen. They were there to protest in numbers. They weren't there to raid the Capitol. They were just there to be seen and observe the surroundings. But the people that were doing the instigating, now some of them probably did get caught up into the fiasco in the heat of the moment, not realizing they were being framed and set up. I believe that wholeheartedly too. But what we later found out was we were infiltrated. They went out, they bought Trump gear. They wore their hats funny so they could recognize each other. They infiltrated both the Oath Keepers. They infiltrated the other group. It's slipping my tongue, but
Proud Boys.
The Proud Boys. They infiltrated them, and then there was just regular ones out in the crowd also. So
the head dude of the Oath Keepers, his last name's Rhodes. I can't remember his first name, but supposedly he was a part of something, but I can't quite. There's a lot of back and forth. He was a part of setting folks up. He was not a part of setting. Do you have any idea on that?
The president of the Oath Keepers was questioned at a CPAC meeting, and the video is on if you got a pencil, t.me/I70 show. And a lot of these clips are on there also. And basically,
say that again. t.me slash
I70 show.
Is that .com or is that on YouTube or?
It's a Telegram.
Telegram. Okay.
And so he's on film. Somebody recorded him and basically said he was a federal informant. And that guy wanted to take this kid out and fight him. Let's go fight, which is just not the average.
Nonsense.
Right. Not the average response. Okay. So there was some infiltration that went on and some setting up. So at that point, I'm standing to the left of the stairway entrance there on the south side of the monument, or north side of the monument, south side of the building. And they start throwing flashbangs about 20 to 25 feet deep into the crowd.
Jeez.
And what that did, the police did. And what that did was push the crowd apart. Well, when that little bit of push made it to the front row, because they were trying to get out of the way of the flashbangs, that is when they gave them the macing thing, and they maced the entire front row, whether you were doing anything or not. They just maced the entire front row. And that pretty much kicked it off for the riot part of it. They instigated that. And then what caught my eye was a yellow flare on the other side of the police line. There's a yellow smoke grenade going off. and I see a bunch of these people that were the ones that were chatting with the head guy of the Capitol Police. They kind of beeline to that side of the stage. And I believe that guy went out there, told them to concentrate at the yellow flare when they saw it. And because he wasn't there for very long, he just walked out, said a couple words to him, and turned around and walked back in. And on my film, I didn't know it right then, but on my film, I see a bunch of people. As soon as they see that yellow, they start heading towards that area. So I'm thinking that might have been where they wanted to make their push.
So the head guy, was he talking to what appears to be civilians?
Yeah, well, retired military or civilian, yeah.
They were dressed in everyday clothing.
Some were, and some had a military backpack on.
Okay. And then when that yellow flare went off, they went to that direction.
Yeah, they went to the right side of the stage.
Ah.
And that is where most of the melee started. At that point, they had me get down from where the Getty photographer was standing. And, of course, we did. They asked us nicely. I just get down. I go around the corner, and I'm standing there, and there's not many barricades there. And there's one female there, and I hear some guys behind me that were thinking about rushing this area right in front of me. I kind of jiggled the barricade to get that lady to look down there, and at that time I got a face full of mace. But I did alert them. They did scoot down and fill in the line, and those people didn't go through that area. But at that point, I had a face full of mace. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't see no more. And I made my way to the north side, I believe, of the property just to kind of shake off the direct shot of mace in my face.
Was that the female Capitol Police officer that you had made a rapport with earlier?
No, what she did was somebody had gotten hurt in the audience. She ushered them back behind the line until they got hurt with a flashbang, I believe. And then when they were able to walk, she escorted them out. So she had left that area. And then there's some photos of me. They say that I'm waving people on to attack, but somebody else had gotten hurt in the crowd, and I was motioning for them to come forward and get behind the barricade so they could get the help they needed. Well,
were there quite a few injuries outside of the Capitol? When you listen to mainstream media, and I think some folks that listen to this podcast pay attention to what's on CBS or NBC or ABC or whatever, but there were other folks injured outside of Capitol Police. There were folks injured within the crowd, right?
I would say more crowd was injured than Capitol Police. Something that really ticked me off that I was worried immensely about was they were shooting mace balls out of paintball guns from an elevated platform out into the crowd. And those would take an eye out in a heartbeat. And I know that because I'm in the industry.
Right. You've been doing paintball. You were in the paintball industry for many, many years, right? You run a field and everything.
Yes, I've been in it for 22 years, and we have pretty strict rules on the mask and the guns and whatnot. So I see these mace balls bouncing off this, 65-year-old lady right in front of me.
What's the FPS? What's the feet per second these balls shoot?
Well, they have to crank them up because they're hard, like almost like a CD case plastic around the mace.
Oh. So
they crank them up quite a bit so they'll actually break on you. They're not like a normal soft paintball. So they have CS powder inside them. So they hit you in the shoulder or the head, and they crack open and then you can't see and you can't breathe.
So it's pretty powerful. What's a normal paintball shootout?
Normal paintball will shoot out at about 280 feet per second. They shoot these out at about 400 or
Yikes.
more.
Okay.
And me knowing the damage that they could do if they hit an eye, I was flipping out kind of that they were actually just shooting randomly into the crowd like they were. I got maced in the face, so I
Yep, you were dropping back. Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped back and go to the left, and some of the Patriots were handing out water and having me wash my eyes and whatnot. Then I get over to the side and just sit and kind of chill out while I'm getting my eyesight back. And then I notice some of the people dressed in military garb from the look almost like Oath Keeper type, they were using milk. So some people were actually planning on, I guess milk nullifies it a lot better than the water.
It does, yes.
So some people were actually planning and plan to be assaulted and whatnot and bring milk. And I thought that was kind of weird that they would do that. Comes to find out that some of the video footage is literally some of these people were in Portland at the Antifa riots there. They've cross-referenced their faces. Some of the people recognized them as being pro-Antifa.
Who would cross-reference them? Do you know? Is it the authorities or?
No, just us independent journalist type.
Okay. So they had already been, because there was during the 2020, there was a lot of different protests and riots and things.
Right, and that's where they fingered some of them from. So they were definitely flown in for this event because they just, you just don't show up 4,000 miles across the country. You know, it's just it was a setup. So
well, you only bring milk to a speech if you're anticipating being maced in the face, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it never crossed my mind, put it that way.
Right.
At that point, I get my eyesight back, and I am over on the side of the building. So I go up against the side of the building, and I'm videoing, and I see some guys in black. One of them runs up and breaks the window in the building. And Trump supporter sees this. They yell at him. They tackle him as he's running away. The police come over that way. They weren't really interested. The police weren't really interested. They just chased the guy. Well, a Trump supporter tackled him and in the grass there and has his hands around his waist where the guy can't go nowhere. The police come over and ask what's going on. And they're like, this is the guy that just broke that window. And the police pulled the Trump supporter off him as the guilty participant just dashes into the crowd, never to be seen again.
Wow.
So it was.
So one of the Trump supporters, a guy breaks a window. One of the Trump supporters apprehend him, turn him over to the police. The police let him go, and he's out.
Yeah, and he just ran back to the crowd somewhere. So it was that point that I'm like, hey, something ain't right. Why wouldn't they prosecute that guy or hold him accountable for breaking the damn window of the Capitol building? It just didn't make sense. And that is really close to, and some people have seen this clip where this guy walks up to these officers there and he's like, hey, when are you calling reinforcements? What the hell? You're not arresting nobody. You're not doing nothing.
Yeah, I saw that video.
And that was basically stemmed from the video that I captured.
Really?
That point, yeah, that guy was watching the same stuff I was watching. So the police weren't interested in apprehending any of them, and that seemed very weird at that point. Then it kind of died down a little bit, and I being a reporter and liking to take a picture, I'm like, man, I could go to the top of them stairs and get a nice picture of the crowd over here. So I go to the top of the stairs, and they're singing the Star Spangled Banner and stuff like that. And I get a couple pictures at the top of the stairs. It's at that time that I hear the electronic doors. Now, the doors in that building are electronically locked, and they kind of click.
To the Capitol. You're talking about the Capitol building have electronic doors.
Yeah, they have, they're electronically sealed. So I'm taking a couple pictures out over the crowd, and I hear click, click. And the Capitol, the police are then holding the two doors directly behind me open.
Someone has that switch, that capability.
Yeah, it had to have come from the inside.
Yeah.
So at that point, the crowd is trying to get in the doors. So as the police hold the doors open, the crowd is filing in. And it was like the worst rock concert ever because you could not go the other direction. And I was forced, and I really don't want to go into it too much because I'm literally facing 47 years in prison and $750,000 in fines.
Oh, wow.
I've got 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors. So I get sucked into the building, and I immediately know I don't want to be in there. And look for.
Did you hear about the Astroworld concert?
Yeah, we can go at the end.
Yeah, the Astroworld concert, folks were like pushed and they couldn't move. So I'm just picturing something similar to that.
It was like, I told my buddy it was like going through a damn birth canal because we couldn't go no other direction. So it didn't open. I get pushed in, and I'm inside the rotunda, and the people, 90% of them, over 95% of them were what I call domestic tourists, because they were just looking at the artwork and looking at the statues, staying inside the velvet ropes. I literally saw nobody do any type of destruction at all. If I would have probably apprehended them myself. That's just because that's the kind of guy I am. I'm not a vigilante. I don't want people to destroy the property. That is basically, that's the people's house. That's all of our house.
Right.
If I would have seen any destruction, I would have probably just tackled the person myself. But I saw none. And I tried to get back out the door instantly, but there was just too many coming in. So what I decided was I took a right down the hallway to see if I could find another exit. I didn't. So then I went back to the benches in the rotunda, and I just sat there until I noticed a lull in the crowd, and then I went back out. And as I walked out, I then am doing I run into a gentleman who said there was some lady just shot in there. And so my reporter part kicks in. So I'm like, can you tell me about it? So I get him on my phone, and I'm doing an interview with this gentleman. He's like, well, I was down the hall a little bit, but we definitely heard gunshot, and some lady got shot, and there was blood. And
that was Ashley Babbitt.
Exactly. So at that point, I did that interview, and then I headed back to my hotel. I got a thing on my phone that said D.C. was in lockdown, and the curfew was started immediately. So being a law-abiding citizen, I just go back to my hotel room. And when I get to my hotel room, I turn on CNN, and they're showing what happened at the southern entrance after I had gotten maced and left that area, and all hell broke loose down there. There was cops pushing old ladies. There was people, man, it was just melee. They were using some flag poles, and there was definitely instigators in that area. But that was the worst part of it, and I never even saw any of that until I got back at the hotel room and saw it on the different news agencies, and I was pretty shocked that even went on. But that was the result of the instigation there.
So from the time you got sucked into the door to the time you got out, do you want to say how long that was?
I would say maybe a half hour at the most, probably less. I'd say closer to 20 minutes, but I really don't know how long I was in there.
Was it hard finding a way out?
Yeah, there's not many doors, and I only looked at one. I only looked once.
And that's when you were able to get out.
Yeah, I didn't want to wander the building. I knew that I don't know, something in my gut just said, sit here by the door, wait till you can get back out, and that's what I did.
Roger.
But in no way, shape, or form touch any police officer, assaulted any police officer, broke anything, tried to go in anybody's room, like they went into different Nancy Pelosi's rooms and whatnot. Yeah, that never even crossed my mind. I just sat down at the bench, kind of took a few pictures and a little bit of video, and then went back out the door. And
so inside the building, you were taking pictures, you interviewed a guy, and you left.
The guy outside of the building.
Oh, you interviewed the guy outside the building.
Yeah, that once I squeezed back through the door, he was like one of the first persons. It's like we went through the door together on the way out.
Okay.
I heard him mentioning that somebody had gotten shot, and that's when my reporter part kicked in and started asking questions.
So you didn't do anything crazy inside the building?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Nor did I even see anybody do anything crazy, other than the guy break the window on the outside and the police let him go, but that happened beforehand.
Wow.
So
you're outside the building, you head back to your hotel room, you put on the news, you said CNN?
Yeah, I flipped through all of them just to see the different footage, and it was crazy. I didn't even know that went on down there. And the tunnel incident was down in that area. I didn't know any of that stuff went on. So
let's talk about, how do you make your way home? You drive home or?
No. Well, you mean you walk to the hotel room?
No, I'm talking about back to your home in Dayton.
Yeah. The next day I had a room for that night and cleaned up, tried to get my eyesight back to normal, and just left the next morning. Got
home. And then, so let's fast forward. When did you know that, hey, the FBI, the government's coming after me? When did you start feeling that?
Okay, I doing my show, I do a lot of research online, and I noticed that there was these people called #sedition hunters, and they were trying to put names and faces to everybody that was there. And come to find out, I'm pretty sure that they got some grants from the Department of Justice to do some fingering. I think that they might even have been CIA agents. I'm not sure. I can't prove. But I saw that my picture was out there, and that I had a vape pen that I was smoking a couple times, and they had a picture of that. And they said that I was using a whistle. They said it was a whistle to bring more troops to rush the front. They basically made it like I was one of the instigators / organizers of the riot. They took the footage of me waving the injured person forward to get medical attention, and they put that with the vape pen that they called a whistle, and they tried me in the court of public opinion, and I was guilty for being an instigator and a leader there at the event.
Damn.
So, which is, I didn't really know hardly anybody there, so that's pretty far from the truth, but I guess I got to prove that in court. We'll see.
So let's fast forward up to, you get identified by the FBI. Obviously, they have a search warrant. They have an arrest warrant. They come to your house. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, yeah. Before that even happened, that happened towards the beginning of July, end of June. Basically, what happened is a buddy of mine said, "Let's take some footage that we have from the event and let's make a documentary." And I'm like, "All right." So he took some footage, and it's viewable at redpillroadshow.com. That's redpillroadshow.com. And he made a trailer, a 2-minute trailer. Well, I played that trailer on my show, on my Patriot Soapbox show. And 3 days later, I was raided by 12 FBI agents in full body armor with their machine guns. There was an emergency room doctor on hand in case there was out, and there was 6 Huber Heights officers, which I knew probably 4 of the 6. I mean, I'm friends with Huber Heights officers.
Right.
I appreciate everything they do. And also help them with their younger groups. They train with some airsoft, and they literally...
The Explorers.
Yeah, the Explorers and the police department itself. They get their pepper guns serviced here and their air fills, and I do maintenance on their airsoft training weapons also. So, I mean, we have a good rapport with the Huber Heights police.
So you're a supporter of law enforcement as
100%,
well.
100%. You got to have law. So, it's raining. They take me out of the house. They ask if anybody's in there. I said, yeah, my son and my wife. And they're beating on the front door. And I have about 170-pound Akita. And I was really fearing that they were going to shoot the dog. It seemed like the FBI wanted to shoot my dog. So the guy is like, "Your dog won't calm down." I'm yelling, handcuffed from the street. I'm like, "You're beating on the front door. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to bark at that point."
Right.
So I go, "Let my wife put him out back, and then you can go in." My wife comes to the front door, and this is about 8:30 in the morning. She gets to the front door and raises the blind, and she says, "Let me put the dog out back so you can come in." So she puts the dog out back, and then they come in the house, and they wake up my 18-year-old, and they put him in the front yard. He's standing in his underwear.
Jeez.
In the rain for about a half hour out there. The neighbors are all
They don't
looking.
allow him to put clothes on?
No. The neighbors were all looking. The neighbors were all looking at the thing and wondering what the heck's going on. So then basically they take me directly to the Huber Heights cops, take me down to the jail here in Huber and give me custody to the FBI. They asked me what I knew about January 6th. I just told them I was a reporter there to cover the day's events for my show, and that's it. And they ended up, I guess, they kept my son and my wife out of the house for 3.5 hours. as they basically ransacked the house looking for evidence, I guess. They ended up taking a shirt that I was wearing, a hat that I was wearing that day, and my laptop and my phone. And basically they took that for their investigation. I was released the same day. The FBI took me down and handed me over to the marshals downtown in the federal building. And then they fingerprinted me and released me right then on OR. No bond, no nothing. And I just went home and just cleaned up the house for the next few hours.
Was it a wreck after they come through there?
Yeah, they literally took a picture of everything that had my handwriting on it. And it was pretty much just everything scattered out so they could go through it. Really didn't. I have the sheet of the stuff they took, and it's basically just my laptop, phone, and some clothing items.
Is there anything on that says you're like I don't know, the George Washington of this whole January 6th so-called insurrection? Yet nobody's been charged with an insurrection yet. That is what
charged with that charge.
What's that?
None of the 650 political prisoners have been charged with that.
Exactly. Yet that's what the news reports on. It was an insurrection because that garners viewership, which then garners money in their pocket, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it fits their narrative that they're trying to shape. But it was an insurrection. It was pretty poorly done because no one brought any weapons that I know of.
So you didn't bring any weapons?
Just a camera and some batteries.
And all that footage can be found on redpillroadshow.com?
Not all of it. Some of our the trailer that we made is on there.
Okay.
I am keeping my footage for my defense.
Roger that. When's your next court date? Or let's just start. How has the court dates been? Are you doing it? Do you have to go to D.C.? Do you do it via Zoom? How does that work?
Just because of COVID, normally I would have to go to D.C., but because of COVID, they are doing it via Zoom. And my next one is December 1st.
Does everyone seem fair, judge-wise, magistrate, your defense attorney?
Well,
do you want to talk about that? You don't have to.
Yeah, I do research. My judge was appointed by Clinton back in '94. He's one of the senior judges. Right now, I have a public defender, and they believe that the election was fair and square, and Biden won. And I'm a little worried about getting 12 of my peers for the trial because they don't call it the swamp for nothing. I'm not worried about the judge being impartial, or I'm not worried about the judge having favoritism. I'm more concerned with the 12 people I would find as jurors for the case.
Right.
Ideally, if it did go to trial, if everything doesn't get dropped, I believe that it would be hard to get a fair shake in D.C. with as much. I mean, they don't call it the swamp for nothing. There's a reason they do it.
So I guess the face of January 6th was the supposed QAnon shaman or whatever, and he got 6 years or something?
No, he hasn't been. I'm actually waiting on his sentencing is November 18th. So, and they don't show, unlike the Rittenhouse is a state trial where it's publicized. You'll never see anything on these federal cases at all.
That's strange.
So
seems unfair. I don't know.
It seems unfortunate. that they're not, viewable, unfortunately. So,
right. Yeah, I was actually looking for you. There's a guy out there. His name is he lives in Texas. He works a lot with political prisoners. His last name's Davis. Doggone it. I'll say it at the end of this podcast because I'll look it up and make sure I say it. But he was the one that showed. No, Tim's out. He's not. He was released on his own recognizance. So that's when I drove up and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" So
yeah, there's been quite a bit of support. I mean, I've got letters from all across the country in support.
Good.
I've got some from Croatia.
Wow.
So
Croatian soldiers. I served with a couple of those in Afghanistan. They hid in a ditch when we were getting shot at. But I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not calling them wimps, but I'm kind of calling them wimps. But anyway, go ahead. I'm just teasing.
This was, I believe, from some lady in Croatia that understands the gravity of the situation and just was giving us
sure, yeah,
religious support.
That's good. You had a little cameo in the HBO documentary Q Storm. Did you see that?
I haven't. I did see. I was in the first Q HBO movie for a little bit, and they videoed me when I was talking to. I've been on his YouTube show. He's basically the owner of the board where Q posts.
Right.
And I had met him there walking down the street and introduced my buddy and him together. Just said hi to him real quick, and then we went our own ways. But, yeah, that clip made it into the HBO. I'm also somewhere in the other one a little bit. And I've been contacted by HBO. Believe it or not, Nancy Pelosi is in charge of security at the Capitol building.
Right.
I've been approached by her daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, who does HBO documentaries, a couple times where she's emailed me wanting me to say my story and show her my footage. And then I pretty much ignored that. And I know that that's just a setup. So she sent me another email not too long ago with her cell phone number with another offer. But I'm just not interested in that. I don't think that and I was right, because they've never shown them in any of the people that were there in a good light. They all just make them out as crazy terrorist or some insurrectionist or whatnot.
Right. We could give her a call if you want. I'm just teasing. We could call Miss Pelosi up and say, "Hey, what's going on?"
I'm going to have to pass on that one. But what's the degree of separation there? That's a little close, ain't it?
It's a lot of close.
Yeah,
that's a hard pass for Pelosi. No, thank you.
Here's what people are going to learn. If I've learned one thing from the Q movement, there are no coincidences.
Right.
There are no coincidences. And I mean, I've been threatened via Twitter quite a bit. I've been kicked off Twitter twice. I've been kicked off Facebook twice. And I was threatened by this K is greater than Q on Twitter. They took time to make a deep fake of me. They took footage from my show and inserted words in my mouth saying, "You have a decision to make. Are you with us or are you against us?" And I saw that on Twitter.
Jeez.
They've also done it to Jordan Slater, who is kind of like one of these QAnon influencers, and also in the Matrix which is a QAnon influencer. So they're evidently, and the media has spent a lot of money and a lot of time to denounce the Q movement. If it was some guy in the basement that they weren't worried of, they would never, ever spend that much time and resource to discredit a guy that was just in his basement. It is military intelligence, and it has some of it has came true. What they've done is they evidently know the playbook of the other side, and they have put these Q drops out. Some of them are 30 days in advance. A couple of them are 1 day in advance. Like we had one of them said that I forget the actual drop, but it's BDT New York City firecracker. And the next day, that was on a Sunday night, and then the next day, Monday morning, there was a BDT is the monetary code for Bangladesh currency. There was a guy from Bangladesh that tried to let off a bomb in the subway. The white hats knew about it. They defused the big bomb in the subway, and just a little personal firecracker went off basically and burnt the guy's gut a little bit, but he survived.
Wow.
So that was 1 day in advance. Also, we believe that John McCain didn't have brain cancer. He used that to try to get out of the prosecution. We believe he was found guilty in military court. Q put a post out and did it at a certain time and said 30 days McCain would be in the news. And exactly 30 days later, at that exact same time, he died. So we believe that he was put to death by lethal injection. If you go and watch The View, there was a couple hints. His daughter, Meghan McCain, was mad one day and said, "You can't kill my father twice." So we know, we pretty much think that he was put down due to the fact that he was helping Syria and the ISIS movement. We found that the U.S. was in charge of ISIS, the Obama administration. They funded them. They told them what to do. And that's the reason Trump got rid of them so quick. And also with MS-13, that is a group that the Democrats and Obama used as their henchmen. They put a hit out on Seth Rich. There were 2 MS-13 gang members that went and killed Seth Rich, which was the DNC leaker we talked about earlier. Podesta, in one of his emails, wanted to make an example out of him, and we have that email. And he basically, these 2 MS-13 gang members killed Seth Rich, and when they go back to get paid, they are offed by somebody. We don't know exactly who. When they went back to get paid, and that basically closes that loop.
Damn.
So we know it's real.
All this comes out of the Q drops?
Yeah, basically.
Is Q still communicating with folks like yourself? And
no, he hasn't dropped for quite a while. Here's an interesting fact. The exact same day that Durham's special counsel started was the first day Q dropped.
Interesting.
Ain't it though?
Damn.
And the reason we know it's tied, and what it is 3 civilians, and this is in a Q post. There's 3 civilians and 7 military that are involved in the Q. platform, we believe. And the way we know it's true is through gematria, through the strange capitalization in Trump's tweets. You can take the capitalized letters and put them into gematria, where each A equals 1, B equals 2, and get some messaging through there. And also Q would post something, and then Donald Trump would post the exact same thing, and vice versa. It went both ways a couple times. So there's definitely, Trump is Q plus. He's signed a couple of the Q drops with a Q plus, and those are the ones that are directly from Donald Trump.
So do you think Trump runs again in 2024?
Yeah, what Trump's doing right now is what Obama was doing when he was in office. Trump is the shadow government for the good guys right now. What I believe is there was a bunch of election fraud. Fraud eviscerates everything. So when the truth comes out, they may lose the presidential position that they currently have.
They being the Democrats.
Correct. I'm not sure if they will just reinstate Trump as the winner, if they'll have special elections. I'm not sure on how that's going to work out. But if it does come out before his 4 terms are up, or his 4 years are up, fraud eviscerates everything, and that should bring us back to normal. Now, on the 23rd of this month, there's 23 red state attorney generals will be presenting a lot of evidence to the Supreme Court, so much so they should not be able to not take the case. And hopefully that will shed a lot more light on the voter fraud and what really happened in the election.
So they're still fighting all this. You say the 23rd of November.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. We've never stopped trying to expose it the entire time. Like in Racine County, they've cheated 25 different ways. COVID was made up. Maybe it's a bioweapon. I don't know. But maybe it's pneumonia, or maybe it's the flu, because what has happened is they used COVID to force the mail-in ballots so they could steal the election. Now, so many people voted for Trump that they literally had to stop counting at 11 o'clock because we broke their algorithms. They didn't plan on that many people voting for Trump. So when their algorithms in their Dominion voting systems and Smartmatic machines went down, they then inserted all these fake votes, pulled votes out from underneath the cabinets. We've all seen it in Georgia. They found out that if they just steal 5 major counties, Maricopa, Atlanta, and Minneapolis, and a few more, that if they can just steal these 5 big counties, that they could sway the vote to make Biden the winner. That's what they've done. Now, there is a lady in Wisconsin that just for the hell of it went to check her vote to make sure it was voted right. And when she checked, she saw that her mother voted. Well, her mother has dementia and was in a old folks home,
nursing
for
home.
lack of a better term, nursing home. And she said, it looks like my mom voted for Biden in this nursing home, and she can't even remember what she had for breakfast and doesn't even recognize me. She don't follow politics at all. So she contacted her local sheriff. Well, that local sheriff in Racine, Michigan, went in and did a heck of a job, and he audited it, that nursing home. And what they found is in 2016, 3 people voted in that nursing home. In 2020, over 40 some voted in that nursing home.
Wow.
So what they did, and the Wisconsin officials, the voting officials, allowed this. Instead of being certified to take the vote, like they would send an actual person out. Because of COVID, they said, no, we can't send nobody out to do that. Just have these people at your facility take the vote. And they would come in and they end up filling them all out for Biden. And just in this one nursing home, then they said that it was because of COVID. Well, the sheriff shows that, look, if it was because of COVID, people still could visit in this plexiglass phone booth that they had set up for their relatives. And the DoorDash guy came in 150 times that month. The bird cleaning guy came in 3 times. The fish tank cleaning guy came in. The HVC guy came in.
Right.
So they were just showing that there was no reason why they couldn't have had the officials do it, other than they didn't want the officials to do it. So this is in one nursing home in one county. That county has 9 nursing homes. There's 72 counties in this state, 70 or 72, and they suspect that there were 200,000 fraudulent votes sent out just in the nursing homes. And that's just in one state.
Wow.
So there's more information that'll be making its way out. I think the bulk of it will come out probably give us something to talk about over Thanksgiving. I know Mike Lindell has tried to expose this, along with the Overstock.com millionaire Patrick Byrne, General Flynn, who I've met down in Florida at a conference. And there's some good patriots that are fighting to get this information exposed.
You said it all, Tim. You said it all. Folks can find you at the Coach Clay I-70 show over on PBS, or what?
Yeah.
Not PBS.
I'll go ahead and read off these real quick.
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
www.DLIVE.TV/PSB. The show is on every Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday from 9 p.m. to 11 Eastern Standard Time. If you want to get the Q post and check those out, they are at www.qagg.news, NEWS. We have a couple Telegram stations at t.me/I70show. And I also am in this chat room, t.me/MG show. And that is in Telegram. The video trailer that we put out is at www.redpillroadshow.com. And there's also a link to my defense fund, as I'm currently looking for a little better attorney to represent me at the current time.
Definitely go give folks that.
And that's at the redpillroadshow.com link. You can reach that.
Okay. Your defense fund is
Yes.
at the Red Pill Roadshow link?
It will get you, it'll direct you to it. We tried to set up I didn't want to do it because I really don't like asking for anything. But my show, the people that run our show pretty much demanded that I start one up.
Definitely. You need good, fair representation throughout all this.
Right. She actually lives in D.C., so she knows how bad it is. And she's like, you really need to start one up. And I reluctantly did. Now, if you try to do that on GoFundMe, they kick you off. They won't let any January 6ers on GoFundMe. We're going to find out that people behind these different web pages are pretty guilty of hiding the truth. And it's a Give, Send, Go page, and the link is on the redpillroadshow.com.
All right, Tim. Thanks for coming on Truman's Town Hall. I appreciate you giving us your story, this exclusive, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
All right. Everybody stay safe out there and pray and keep your chin up. Better times are ahead.
All right. So there it was. Tim Hart. He's being tried in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Just a couple of things before we go. I mentioned Mr. Davis. His name's Rudy Davis, and he does a lot of work with political prisoners. You can find Rudy Davis at www.yearofjubilee.com. You can also find him over on YouTube at Lone Star 1776. That's Rudy Davis. He does a lot of different things with communication with political prisoners. He's out of Dallas, Texas. Check him out. I learned of him, and that's when I did episode 88 of this podcast, Who is Schaefer Cox? He did a lot of work with Schaefer Cox, writing back and forth and helping get the word out on who is Schaefer Cox. So, Rudy Davis, check him out. Also, I'm going to play a couple clips. We talked about, or Tim talked about Meghan McCain. So here's that clip where she's talking about her father.
I've been getting into it on Twitter this morning with people over this, is that people are saying this is just free speech, you're being a snowflake, you're so sensitive. First of all, you're talking about sitting senators, and you're talking about Congress people, Maxine Waters, Mitt Romney, Adam Schiff, Bernie Sanders, President Obama, the Clintons, my father, you can't kill him again, but whatever, Rachel Maddow, Black Lives Matter, these are real people. Yeah. And so I don't
know if you heard that or not, but she said, my father, you can't kill him again. That's what folks are talking about. She said, you can't kill him again. Who killed him? That's the question folks are asking. Anyway, I'll leave that up to you. Like I leave this podcast. When I bring folks onto this podcast, I ask questions, I let them talk, give their story, and it becomes their podcast, essentially. I believe, wherever you look, folks like to interrupt. And folks like to make it about themselves. This is Truman's Town Hall. All right? And we're all the town, right? I'm just the facilitator of the town hall. So it's good to hear, whether we agree or disagree, it's good to hear the stories. So I will end the podcast from the Red Pill Roadshow and the trailer that Tim talked about. So go check out the redpillroadshow.com, and you'll see this trailer. This is obviously just the audio. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Please, please, please share with a friend. It's free. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com. Follow us over on Truman's Town Hall Podcast on the Facebook page. If you need to email us at truepodcast@gmail.com. And I will talk to you later.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard, see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
Do you have any evidence that the Capitol attack was organized by, quote, fake Trump protesters?
We have not seen evidence of that.
I'm going to wear a Trump hat. I bought one today.
James Sullivan says he turned in tips about his brother to the FBI here in Salt Lake City.
We have not seen evidence.
The fucking last Trump at the Trump rally during the daytime.
He says he believes that his brother was not only involved in the riot at the Capitol, but somehow in charge.
We have not seen evidence.
According to the government's own court file, those law enforcement officers participated in the riot, sometimes in violent ways.
That sounds like a gunshot.
Who shot your wife on January 6th?
I don't know. Somebody knows. Somebody up in D.C. knows. I think a lot of people know.
Exactly how many federal undercover agents or confidential informants were present at the Capitol.
And in this video, a man in uniform appears to go so far as to give them a helping hand, while elsewhere, officers appear to pose for selfies with some who stormed the Capitol.
There was a chance that Nancy Pelosi ended up being called as a witness. She did not want to be called as a witness.
Nancy Pelosi, who's in charge of security on the House side, wouldn't allow it.
FBI operatives were organizing the attack on the Capitol.
It appeared it was John Sullivan and Trump haters.
What reality is this? Oh my God, we did this.
Look at the document. The government calls those people unindicted co-conspirators. What does that mean? Well, it means that in potentially every single case, they were FBI operatives.
Let's go, Brandon.